Hey guys, it's Ryan here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we're doing another episode of the Sword and Sorcery Book Club. Today, we're continuing on with the road to the Scourge of the Serpent. We're looking at the 5th story in the list that I made up, and that would be The Haunter of the Ring, which is collected in this book right here, The Horror Stories of Robert E. Howard. It's on page 410, which is nearly the end of the book, and it does have an illustration attached to it, which is pretty nice. It looks pretty cool. I didn't mention this before, but there you go. And this collection actually has all of the Conrad and Kirowan stories, as far as I know, and a few of the other kind of general horror story type things, obviously. So it has Wolf's Head. It has a few werewolf stories, actually. It also has Dig Me in the Grave, the Blackstone story, which we talked about last year, and The People of the Dark, and The Valley of the Lost, and a few other stories that I've heard quite a few people talk about before. Pigeons from Hell. That one sounds like something that Michael K. Vaughan would like, but I'm not really sure if he's talked about it before. I'm sure he has. I just don't remember watching a video where he does, right? But yeah, The Haunter in the Ring is the story we're looking at today. It's a Kirowan story. It was published in June 1934 in Weird Tales, which is near the end of his career, I guess, because, yeah, I think so. I think it is near the end of his career. And this is kind of interesting because it is a Kirowan story, but Conrad doesn't show up in it, which is interesting because I always think of them as a pair, right? They're always in each other's stories, but I guess not. These are kind of like a contemporary story. These characters are more archaeologists than they are detectives, but they kind of follow the same kind of idea, right? They are people that know the occult, and through whatever reason, they find themselves interacting with others that are being afflicted by the occult, right? And so that's kind of the concept here. This story is about Kirowan. He is like the protagonist character, but it's actually told from someone else's point of view. Now, I can't remember his first name, but it's O'Donnell's point of view. O''Donel, I think. It doesn't have two L's like you would expect. And it's a story that really focuses on this other character called James Gordon, or Jim Gordon, who is talking to Kirowan about his problems, and then Kirowan realizes something about the problem being off, and then he goes to investigate. And so we end up with this interesting situation where the story, like impetus, is this character Jim Gordon's curse, right? But the story is a Kirowan story, but it's being told from the perspective of this other character. And so it feels like you're jumping through hoops, but basically it's a Kirowan story. It doesn't really make too much of a difference in the long term. And having these extra characters adds a lot of flavor to the story that you might not necessarily see from something like a Conan story or a Kull story, right? So there you go. This story is pretty simple. There's not really much going on, but it is pretty interesting and it's pretty enjoyable. And I can see this being a fun comic book, but it doesn't really have legs. Like, the idea of Kirowan and Conrad going off on these adventures continuously has legs, but this idea of like turning this into a miniseries or something like that doesn't really work, right? It's too short of a story, but there are a lot of implied elements of character work that could make this like a broader story. And I wonder if that's really what's going to be happening here when we connect this into the Scourge of the Serpent storyline, right? So the story is, like I said, about Kirowan solving a situation for a friend. Basically, this guy, Jim Gordon, or James Gordon, recently married this young lady called Evelyn, and they've had a lovely, beautiful relationship. They've been married for about a year, and in the last week, his wife has tried to kill him 3 separate occasions, right? The first time, his wife pushed him off a cliff. He went rolling down it, but wasn't harmed. Then the second time, she tries to run him over with her car as she's kind of coming in to, I guess, park in their house. And then the last time, the third time, she slashes him with his own razor when he's trying to like go to the restroom to do something. He sees that his wife has his razor in her hand. He's about to chastise her about the fact that she shouldn't use that for whatever it is that she was going to use it for. And as that happens, she tries to slash his throat with it, and he manages to use his hands, his arms to block it, and so he does get cut, but he doesn't die, right? But the thing is that after every incident, his wife comes back too. She's missing time, and she doesn't realize that she'd done this, right? And he's kind of going crazy, and the reason why we learn about this is because our character that's giving us the story, O'Donnell, shows up, and he shows off this cool dagger that he has, and she he pulls it out kind of randomly, and this scares Gordon, who reacts very negatively because he thinks he's gonna get killed, right? And there are some supernatural elements that are involved in this story, like Jim Gordon mentioning that his great-grandfather, Richard Gordon, had killed his wife in a weird situation, and that he looks a lot like him. And so maybe this is like a karmic kind of situation, where he's reincarnated from his ancestor. He still carries the, I don't know, they don't phrase it this way, but like, the sins of a past life. And so now that he's been married to a wonderful woman and he feels happy, God or a curse or whatever has been used to turn this into his death, right? Into a situation that causes him to die in a freak way, the same way that his great-grandfather Richard killed his wife, right? And Kirowan, like, lets it go. Like, he lets the story play out. And then he's like, no, I don't think that's it, right? He kind of has a cooler head. Something about it triggers an interest in him, right? And it's mostly because this had been happening after Evelyn, Jim Gordon's wife, got a ring, a beautiful copper ring that looks like a snake coiled 3 times and eating its own tail, right? And so this kind of strikes a light bulb in Kirowan's mind. And so they're like, okay, let's go off to see Evelyn and what's going on. And when they get there, she gets accused of trying to kill her husband. She reacts negatively, but she also realizes that he must be saying this in reality. It must be true because he wouldn't lie to her, right? And some other characters show up, and they don't really end up being important, but they add a certain level of humor and kind of like, I don't know what to call it, like flavor to the encounter. And as they're interacting, they need matches for their cigarettes or for the cigars or something. And in a fit of forgetfulness, Gordon tells her, oh, go get it, it's in this place, right? Where he also stores a gun. And in that moment, he freaks out, and he knows that she's going to try to kill him again. And this time everyone sees it, and they realize that, oh, she is being haunted or, taken on by something, right? And she mentions feeling this dark, hairy creature pawed her in her dreams, right? And this really makes Kirowan know what this is about, right? It turns out that the guy that gave her this ring is this character that goes by Joseph Rolock, who actually is later revealed to be this other character called Yostov Vrolok, right? So this is interesting to me because it reminds me a lot of the Nikolov character, I think that's his name, from Tarzan 2 and 3. The Burroughs stories, not the Disney version, right? In that story, there is like this fancy man from Eastern Europe who hates Tarzan, and he wants to take Tarzan's legacy away from him, right? His Clayton estate, right? And this guy uses a lot of these techniques of like hiding under false names and playing off as a different person, the same way that this character does. And their names even kind of sound similar to me. So I wonder if that's the inspiration for this. But it turns out that this character, based on what Kirowan says, is some sort of vampire, or at least he was using the word vampire as like a simile for something else or a metaphor for something else. But it's kind of unclear, like, because it is a Kirowan story and it's a Robert E. Howard horror story, I would believe that he means that he is a literal vampire, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Although he has that kind of like suave, cool guy from Eastern Europe vibe that a lot of vampires have in a lot of media. So it works out, right? But it turns out this guy gave the ring to Evelyn so that she can kill Gordon, so that he can take her as his wife, because he had a thing for her when they were younger, and she decided to go with Gordon instead of him, right? And so Kirowan realizes the problem, rushes off to his house, to Joseph Rolock's house, and when he's there, he talks to this guy, right? And he does all the stuff that I mentioned where he tells him he's a vampire and stuff. And because Kirowan shows up, Rolock thinks, oh, Gordon is dead. That's great, right? I can go off to the woman that I wanted this whole time. But Kirowan continues to talk to him, and he realizes that this guy used an occult ritual to summon this beast from the outer darkness, and basically did like a Faustian deal, right? He gave a soul for this creature doing this task, right? But the soul that it's going to take is the one that gave him the task, right? And so Rollock thinks that that's not the case, that he could take Jim Gordon's soul instead. But of course, the beast doesn't want that because that soul was given to it for free, right? Like it just got it. So he wants Rollock's, right? And in this conversation, Kirowan kind of forces this guy to realize this. And when he realizes it, his willpower, I guess, kind of weakens. And so that's when the beast attacks and drags him to hell with it. And that's where the story basically ends. And it was pretty cool. I liked it a lot. I think that last bit at the end there is pretty cool. It would definitely look like a really awesome episode of television. Just kind of either seeing these shadows in the background that look kind of like a gorilla, or just seeing like a pit open in the bottom of this guy's room that drags him down to hell. Like that sort of imagery would be really, really cool. And I did enjoy this. And ultimately, at the end, Kirowan is actually quite happy about the fact that he led to the death of this guy, even though he probably wouldn't have died otherwise, because he would have lived happy in knowing that the other character was dead until he figured out he wasn't. And there wouldn't really be a way for the creature he summoned to steal his soul until he died, right? So Kirowan is actually happy about this because there is this implied element here that Rollock did this to a woman that Kirowan was interested in or that had a relationship with before, right? At least that's what it seems like to me. It might be that it's just something he's done to other people and Kirowan knows about it, but the satisfaction at the revenge and all of these other elements kind of really do lead me to believe that this is something that was personally important to Kirowan, right? So, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it's in another story and I just don't know about it. So, if it is, let me know down below. If you've seen an adaptation of this in comic books, let me know that as well. And overall, I think that this is pretty cool. I wonder if that vampire character, Rollock, is going to show up at all as an agent of Thought Amon in the Scourge of the Serpent, because the way that it worked last year for the Battle of the Blackstone was that there was a current timeline, 1930s, and then there was the Hyborian timeline, and there was a little bit of a 1500s timeline for a brief moment, right? And in this story, in the Scourge of the Serpent, it seems like we're going to focus on the Hyborian age again, but we're going to have that contemporary storyline happening at the same time, because Kirowan will be relevant to this story, right? Maybe not Conrad himself, but Kirowan for sure will be relevant, since he was kind of like the hero character in the last one. He had like the special Cyclops eye, right? So I wonder if Rollock is going to be some sort of priest of the Serpent Man, or he's going to have some connection to Thought Amon. If he is a vampire, at least that's how he's described, maybe he's someone that's lived for a long time. Maybe he wasn't from the Hyborian era specifically, but maybe he was from a time after the Diluvian situation where he knew a lot more about real information from that time compared to like our modern characters. And so there might be that connection there, right? And how did he get the ring? Why did he get it? How does this tie into the stuff from the Serpent Ring story? All of that seems to be really related. I feel like you can make this like through line, right? Like the ring was given to the priestess at the end of the Serpent Ring. She died, presumably, but then maybe another character, an Eastern European character that happens to be a vampire, ends up getting it from that place. He, deals with that Knight of Malta and that snake priestess. Maybe they're not dead or something like that. He gets the ring and then he moves on and does other things, and eventually comes back to the 1930s where he interacts with Evelyn and Jim Gordon and Kirowan, and then that ties in all the way back to the Hyborian age. I don't really know, but I can see that happening. So we'll see how it actually plays out. I think it'll be really fun. So I hope you guys are enjoying this reading challenge, and let me know what you think down below about the story and about my thoughts on where the story might go going forward in terms of the Scourge of the Serpent actually playing out in a way that, will be interesting, tying all these stories in together, right? So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys next time.